Okay, so our challenge is to make a very high resolution image so we can get a large print, and we don't necessarily have a high resolution camera. Let's say we've only got 10 megapixels. So here we are looking at our example scene, and this is the bit that we decided we want to use for our photo. So if we took one photo with our 10 megapixel camera, that's all we'd have. 10 megapixels may not print up very well, very large. So instead, let's zoom in a bit and turn the camera to portrait orientation and actually take several shots of the same scene with lots of overlap. So we start on one end and we're just going to take a shot there, second one there, third one there, and a fourth one just to cover the scene there. So now we've covered the whole scene, and the net result is that we'll end up with an image that's same size once it's all stitched together, but it's double or triple the resolution. Now it's important that all these shots have the same exposure. So right at the start, you need to set your camera to fully manual exposure, and preferably manual focus as well. This way all the images, even if they're not quite the perfect exposure, at least they will match in exposure and they will blend together as seamlessly. And that's pretty much it. You can get a bit trickier if you decide you want an even larger file and an even larger image. So you could actually do multiple rows if you're feeling confident. So same principle, making sure there's lots of overlaps. You'd take one shot there, one shot next to it, you do that whole row, and then the second row would also have lots of overlap going across this way. Then you might even do a third row on this side. And at the end of the day, you might not find everything blending and matching together, but at least you'll have a lot of data that you can stitch together to make a large print. This will work well for things that are off in the distance, as it is in this scene. It's not going to be as easy to do handheld if you've got lots of things in the foreground. So this image was shot from about 30 or so different exposures, but because there's lots of things close by, it wouldn't have been possible to do this handheld, because all these things here in the foreground would have gone out of alignment. But things off in the distance, like a landscape, that's absolutely fine, because the slight movement of the camera that wobbles a bit side to side isn't going to make any difference, and you'll get a good result. So give it a go. I quite often find myself shooting more than one image just to get a wider view sometimes. For example, this scene here on top of Eureka Tower. I was telling a friend about it and he said, "Oh, take a photo." Now this is the widest my lens would go, but I really wanted to show more of the scene, especially the way it looked out the windows, so I took a few shots and stitched it together, and then we have a much wider view where you can see the cityscape as well as inside the loos. Yeah, might seem like a funny thing to photograph, but it was just for a mate. It's not a perfect stitch. You can see here there's some errors. I'd love to come back there with a proper panoramic head and do a full 360 view, but just for the sake of taking a few shots, and each of those shots are going to be fine on their own anyway. I might be able to stitch only two together to perfect stitch, but it was just a bit of a throwaway assignment, just for a bit of fun. And there we go. And the only other thing to be aware of when you're shooting is try to move the camera about its axis, rather than you'll tend to move the camera side to side with your body. You don't really want to do that, because that sets up errors in perspective. What you really want to do is to make sure that the camera is the bit that's turning. So the camera needs to turn on its axis, which is what the proper panoramic heads let you do, so there's no errors and everything stitches together well. And the only final thing to be aware of is that there will be things that move that you aren't in control of, such as waves and things like that. So sometimes you need a bit of extra work to blend them together. So just be aware that things that are moving around a lot might be hard to stitch together. But a static scene shouldn't be a problem at all. So have a bit of fun with that. Good luck with it. should get some fun results.